Okay, folks, we're in the 15th week. We're coming down to the end. The main things are getting those last few assignments done. I'm not going to dump like a final exam or anything on you. We do have a final quiz. That's going to be the fourth one. We're not going to do a fifth one, okay? So the fifth one we're not going to do. We're just going to do the fourth and call it quits at that. And I'll show you the fourth, what we're going to do with the fourth really quickly. That's coming up next week. But the big things are to make sure you have the grammar book done and make sure you get the journal together and get that final essay in, okay? So first thing on the grammar book, and I usually, I mentioned this earlier in the semester, but I know everybody forgets with this. With the grammar book, you're going to need to get it to me sometime in the last week or right after that. Okay, now I will have a box outside my office door during finals week, and it will say for English 101 grammar, and you can drop it off there. Make darn sure your name is on the book. Almost every semester I get somebody who forgets their name, so make triple sure. In fact, I would do it right now. If you're sitting there and looking at your grammar book, put your name on it. So please make sure you're not the one who forgets. There's going to be somebody. Don't be that person, okay? So make sure your name's on it, and you can drop it off in front of my office during finals week anytime. So, and I'm in throughout finals week. I'm in and out of my office. I have classes Monday, Wednesday mornings until about 11:10 or so. But I'm in and out of the office, so you can leave it there anytime, and I'll get it. People don't, steal the book and then go sell it on eBay, for $1,000. That doesn't happen. So just go and drop it off, and I'll get it. And if not, or if you cannot come to campus, you can mail it to me. Okay, just send it to Joseph Pendleton, and if you can look up the address at VVC, it's like 818-422 or something, or 922. I forget what it is. But just send it to VVC on Bear Valley Road and all that, and just put my name on it in the English department, Joseph Pendleton, English department, and then put the address for VVC. And it'll get to me. So just make sure you get that to me one way or another. The best way is to drop it off, or if you do want to mail it, you can do that. But you need to get that to me. If it arrives after the last week, that's fine. If it arrives... but sometime definitely before the 20th or so is definitely what you want to have. So and almost everybody's does. There's almost never any issues with it. So so send that off or drop it off. Either way is best. So get the grammar book in, and the big thing with the grammar book is that you finished it. You finished it and you gave a good faith effort throughout. Okay, that's what I'm looking for. And again, keep in mind I did write the book. I know what the answers are. I go through it and I look through all the grammar books. I'm not going to worry about whether or not you got one here or there wrong, or if you mixed up some answers on one of the exercises. What I want to see is a good faith effort throughout, and then you're going to get full credit. Okay, I don't go deducting points here and there for one or two wrong here and there. What you want to make sure is that it is thoroughly completed. All the drills, all the exercises, everything is done. That will get you full credit on the grammar book. And that's always a big help. Students who get that down, that's 100 points. Boy, does that make a big difference in your grade. Okay? So get it all complete. Make sure it's thoroughly done. Good faith effort. And again, I can recognize a good faith effort pretty quickly. So make sure that's done. Send that in or drop it off in the last week. And then make sure you get the quiz done. Okay, so let me go through the calendar. The quiz is going to be next week. Quiz 4 is going to be on the 13th and 14th. I'll open it up. I'll give you 3 tries on it. And really, if you got quiz 3 down with subjects and verbs, quiz 4 is really dang easy. It's really just parallels. And I'm going to tell you point blank, I'm just going to ask you to parallel main verbs. If you have one subject and 2 verbs, and you can do that, you'll be fine with the half of it, and then the other part is just on dependent clauses. Okay, if you know a since, because, when, although, and all these words work, you're good to go. Okay? So make sure you understand parallels and dependent clauses, and you'll be fine on quiz 4. Okay? I gave a little bit extra time for quiz 3 because it is a little bit more challenging. Quiz 4 isn't as challenging. If you got through 3, you should be good for 4. Okay? So that's coming up next week. The journal is going to be due on the 15th. And again, I've mentioned this a few times. Just try to make sure you get up to the 20 pages. I've had a few questions on it so far, and those are great. Just make sure you copy and paste everything from your discussion and put it in your journal. If you find you're going to come up short, and you should have finished the last discussion at the board, and you should be able to put your journal together right now. And again, the whole thing is one big double-spaced journal palooza, and it should be around 20 pages, double-spaced. And it should be pretty good. So just make sure you don't have, where I've seen people crash and burn on it, is that they don't have it thoroughly developed. Okay, they only have 8 pages or 12. That's where you're really going to get knocked down. Or an even bigger issue is if you put your essays in there. Your essays do not count as journal entries. Okay, make sure you know that. Or the final thing, how to get a 0 on the journal, is copy and paste anything from the internet. So make sure you don't do that. And again, I really want to emphasize that. Don't, copy and paste something and change some of the words. It's easier to catch than you might realize. So don't do that. Just sit down and write out what you remember about Du Bois. Write out what you remember and your thoughts on Washington. Okay? Write out what you remember about what Sukhomel said and what went on in the Warsaw ghettos. What was going on in the Greek tragedy and things like that. Okay, anything you can come up with to fill it out, and just show me that you're being thoughtful. Okay, so I just want to really emphasize that it doesn't have to be spelled correctly and all that kind of stuff. Just show me that you're thinking thoughtfully about, you're thinking about what went on in those readings, and just go back to them and you can fill it up, pretty well. Okay, so that's going to be due on the 15th. Okay. So that's our crash and burn course to come up to the end, get everything in. And so you should be good. We have time. We have more than a week for the final essay. And I'm going to walk you through some of the things from the middle draft stages, from the early and middle draft stages that'll get you in good shape. Okay. I'll try with next week to get a final draft video up. But I want to walk you through the middle draft stages right now. And okay, so I hope that's clear on it. And so let me first put my painting up. This was, and I didn't show you guys the whole painting. Let me get rid of myself. Goodbye. And this is the painting from the discussion. I don't want you writing on the discussion paintings. I don't, and I would really prefer you to not write on, Michelangelo and, Leonardo da Vinci. Try to get something weird and quirky. Okay. I wrote about this one because, first of all, when I first posted it, I didn't know anything about the painting. I really like the idea of going into a painting without knowing anything about it, and then breaking it down and finding out about it and using that painting as, a process of discovery. Okay. And there's too much out there on Michelangelo and Da Vinci and all that kind of stuff. Go after one of these quirky little weird guys. And I'll admit I know a good deal about the New Testament, but I don't know enough about the Old Testament and Exodus. So I kind of said, okay, let me use this painting as an opportunity to learn. And let me show you a little bit of what I came up with. These are the drafts, and again, I want to emphasize with folks the kind of the early draft stages of what you should be doing. This is my copy of Vasari I've gotten a PDF. You should be finding any artists like Ghiberti. You don't have to read this whole darn thing, okay? It's way too much. But if you find an artist that's kind of like Ghiberti, or Ghiberti. I always forget. I got to shake my hands in the air. Ghiberti. It's kind of got a weird name. That's good enough reason for me to write about him. You could use that to write about him. I don't know anything about him. But if you read the Vasari, then you got a Renaissance perspective on him. And that's helpful. So there it is. So get that, or one of these other guys, Messina, Damascena. I guess it's Antonello. Just pick one of them that you find interesting and then do a little bit of Google time and find some artworks by them that you find quirky and interesting. Okay. I found Perugino kind of interesting because he was really a pugnacious bugger. I kind of thought he was a difficult guy, and I thought, okay, that's going to be interesting. This guy wasn't all that religious, apparently, from his life. But he painted some magnificent religious paintings. I just found that kind of compelling and interesting. So that's kind of why I picked him. I just found him quirky and weird. And that's when I went about finding this painting, and I've posted it up there, you know, on Exodus. So I just found that interesting. Now, what I've done, and I showed you this before with the first draft, you saw this. What I did was take pieces of the painting. And again, you got the whole painting right here, right there. I took a piece here of that, and again, I got it all wrong in the first drafts, okay? I want to be really clear about that. I'll get to the later drafts in a bit. So I got it backwards, you know, in the first draft. And I didn't understand the story from Exodus. I didn't look it up. And I really want to emphasize what you want to do in the early draft stages is go into the painting understanding the form of the painting itself. And what I did here was describe what's going on. And I got a lot of things wrong from the narrative. I thought this guy was an angel or something like that, and so was he. And I didn't know what these women were doing. I thought he might be Jesus or Gabriel or something like that. I don't know. And who the heck are these guys? So they're looking kind of creepy. Then I would eventually find out. And again, this was my early draft stage. I'm calling this guy an angel over here. And again, I'm wrong. And I want to emphasize it. I'm wrong about much of the narrative, but I'm right about much of the form of the painting. That these guys are kind of surrounding him as if they're giving him some space and some privacy. They are. Okay, these guys would end up being, as I did more research on it, local men from Perugino would have known, political men from the time period. And again, this is Moses, and these are his two children. And this is his wife, you know. So I would learn that later on, but I didn't worry about it. I just described what's going on. See, I don't know the woman's name. I don't know it. That doesn't matter. I'm going through the form. And then I went to this other side of the painting over here. So I went from here to here. Okay? And I didn't get the angel in it that's blocking his way. And again, I still did not know what was going on. So they're listening, they're traveling and listening to the angel's command. Okay, the man at the front of the group, that's Moses. I can't explain how stupid that is of me to have not known that. I just called him the man at the front. Okay, brilliant. But again, that's fine. That's what I want you to do. And it's very important to feel, you know, and I always say it's very, you know, you can't learn anything unless you first feel stupid. And I really do mean that. Okay, so I went into this painting feeling stupid and being totally okay with that. Okay, and I want you to be, you know, entirely fine with that. So that was my rough draft. And I really want to emphasize that I don't want you going into Wikipedia to figure out the painting beforehand. You can figure out the painting better than anybody at Wikipedia or at any other site or any scholar. You can do that. And I really, by this point in the class, you should have sharpened your critical thinking skills enough that you can analyze something and you can know you're doing something original and something, you know, right, and something that can stand on its own 2 feet. Now, the second draft stage that I had up there, this is it. Now, I made up a name, so I'm Susie McFluffy. There, and I've filled in a lot of the gaps. Let me come on back in the picture here. So you can see me as I'm walking through this. I've filled in a lot of the gaps. This is still not a good essay. It doesn't matter. I'm in the draft process. I think it's going to work out, okay? If I follow the process, things work out. And if you've been following all along the semester, you know that we work from the evidence up. Now, this essay went through significant changes as it went through the process. And the thing that dictated that was what I started to find from the evidence. Now, one of the things I did early on was spend a little time looking it up with my handy-dandy Bible, looking up in Exodus. So I've got a Bible about to fall on my head, up in my bookshelf, and I looked it up in Exodus, and I'm like, oh my God, you really were stupid there, weren't you? And it was great, because now I'm learning something, and it's not just so much learning about Exodus, it's learning Perugino's view of Exodus, because he doesn't entirely stick to the narrative in Exodus. He has to fill in an enormous number of gaps, okay? He fills things in like crazy according to the way he wants to compel the viewer. And that's fine. That's the nature of art. I mean, a lot of people don't know that Michelangelo's, Sistine Chapel, the God pointing out to, putting his finger out to, and touching Adam, that's not in Genesis. That doesn't describe an actual scene in Genesis. Michelangelo was creating that scene and projecting it onto Genesis. And that's what Perugino's doing here. And that was a magnificent experience, because that's like, okay, now I'm starting to see what Perugino's doing. And that's cool, after I understood the form first. Now, let me go to the body paragraphs first, because that's where I worked. Now, one of the things I did was rearrange it. Beforehand, I had taken this little segment first, and then I went to this one, and then I went up here, and I took the whole top piece. And then I went, forget that, okay? I took the top piece first, because that's the way the narrative actually runs through the painting. I set the context. This is me setting the context, because he's starting for his journey in the middle of the painting, and I didn't realize that, for his journey back to Egypt. But I'm setting the context for what's going on in the top middle, right there. That's him getting ready, and I wanted to pull in that rock at first, but I didn't quite know what to do with it. This is me describing what's going on, and now I know from reading Exodus, after I already described the content of the painting. I got the form done. What we're doing is a formal interpretation. I start learning they're in Midian. Okay, that's cool. And this is Moses and his family. And notice how it's all about Moses' robe. And you don't really catch much about Moses here, and you don't really catch much about his wife. So it's starting off with Moses and things like that. And I started to describe it more carefully. There are men saying farewell, and above them is the greenery of nature. Then above both of them is the rock structure, which shows the stability or home for Moses. This gives a calming appearance, and I had to kind of gut check myself here. Is this sublime or beautiful? And you notice what I'm reaching towards now. I'm moving towards an aesthetic. That's the aesthetic interpretation I'm moving towards. I see this, and I'm kind of checking my gut. Is this disruptive, or is this calming? Is there some kind of harmony here? And I thought this was harmonious in the middle of the painting. That's what I felt. Okay? And again, somebody can come along and find it disruptive, and I don't know how, but maybe they could. That's perfectly fine, but show me how it's working. Okay? And I just found this kind of in unison with this rock to give some kind of stability. And so you can see I'm moving towards an aesthetic of the beautiful. I haven't wrapped it up yet. I still don't have my thesis together. Okay, and this is in the second draft stage, and I really want, I know I mentioned some of this last time, but I know this is where most of you are, and this is where the problems are going to start, is in the middle draft stages. And then I rearranged it. Then, instead of going from, the bottom right to the left to the center, I went from the center to the bottom left to the right. The content, as I learned more about it, dictated the reorganization. And boy, did I get a lot more in the middle draft stage, okay? And you're going to see this in, again, going to Exodus and reading up on this. Let me just show you what I got more. I learned her name. Okay, hopefully I can pronounce it correctly. That's Zapharina. Do I even give her name? Yeah, Zipporah. sorry about that, Zipporah. Again, I don't know Exodus all that well. It's Zipporah, and these are her children. And you know, right now they're running into a problem. But notice, in spite of this crisis, this is a crisis. The angel is blocking their way and has created a crisis. But right in the middle is Zipporah, calmly, and she creates kind of a triangle here, calmly looking at the boys, and she knows what to do and what needs to be done. He doesn't. That's the confusion, and this is the calming presence of Zipporah. Okay? And I go back to that. The aesthetics of the scene, okay, I didn't quite finish this. I was going to say it's beautiful. But his younger son is holding his mother's hand and seems to be unaware of his father's and the angel, but also of his fate. In the background of the group is a hectic scene with many travelers leading in the opposite direction. But what I'm going to emphasize is Zipporah's calm in the middle of this, storm. Okay? I haven't gone there quite yet, but let's see where it goes. And then the last scene is that scene that I had started off with. And again, don't be afraid to address the form first. This is, once I found out more about it, it flipped it around. But the backbone of my essay I set with the early draft stage. As I learned more, I was okay with rearranging it and developing it. And this is what we've been doing all along in the draft process. Refining and developing those middle stages. That's where the good essays are made. I've set the context. I now know everybody who's here. Zipporah's doing the dirty work of doing a circumcision because she knows that Angel is upset because there wasn't proper sacrifice before they left town. Okay, and get myself out of the way. And once again, I'm going towards an aesthetic. Moses stays next to the angel and holds a scepter, but he's also set apart from the other men by his golden and green robes, and the scepters he holds across his shoulder. He and the angel are the ones who seem to be paying the most attention to the circumcision. I still have an error there. Okay. So I still have some boo-boos in there. That's actually his brother. Okay. But I start fixing all of those. And again, all these are just really stupid boo-boos, but I start fixing them issue by issue. That starts to get better and better. Now here's where I am later on. This is where I want you to be starting very soon. This is where you want to get it. And you're going to see where I'm following the processes that I've spelled out in the sheets that I've been going through all along. Working from the evidence, getting the description down, trying out your analysis, revising those and making them better, and getting your analysis down, and then in the middle draft stages, going after your thesis. Now you're going to see in this third stage of the draft process, I now am starting to try to get my thesis down. Okay? Now before I came to the thesis, and I started to develop the introduction in the second draft stage, started to, but it wasn't very good. Let me go to the body paragraphs first. I'll come back to all this thesis stuff and everything else. You can see I tried it 3 times. I'll come back to that. But you can see now I really developed it a lot more. And I'm going into the balance. There are men saying farewell above in the greenery. Then above them is the rock. And I start the narrative is the start of the narrative is beautiful since it portrays the calm and stable scene that is balanced. I'm noticing the balance that's in this scene. Okay? And then this. So all this is getting developed more. I didn't have much on Zipporah in my first draft of this second paragraph. And let me show you that again. Let's see if I've got it here. Now that's the first draft. Let's get rid of that. We're done with that. That's a mess. Here's my second draft. Let's take a look at Zipporah and how much I had in the second draft stage on her. You'll notice I don't really have anything on Zipporah in here. Okay? And I didn't really nail it down. So I had on the sons holding the mother's hand, and I didn't have it really developed. But now look what I did in the next draft stage. I got a lot more on her, and I made her more central to the interpretation. The aesthetics of the scene is somewhat troubling, since it is far more chaotic than the opening scene where they are about to leave. But it is also threatening, since Moses is facing not only the end of the journey, but also the end of his life. And this is where I shift gears. So Moses is more in a panic. He's facing possible end of his life here. But in the middle of the scene, Zipporah is depicted attending to Eliezer in a maternal and caring manner that calms the chaos around them. This peace in the middle of the chaos hints at her ability to maintain the harmony of her family even when threats are present. I'm starting to make her central to the aesthetic of my interpretation. She's going to be absolutely essential to the aesthetic of beautiful in this painting, not Moses. I was going down the wrong path. I was emphasizing Moses, and really what I'm seeing through my close formal analysis is that Zipporah is getting moved from the sidelines into the middle of the painting and is becoming the most powerful presence in the painting. And that's really, really cool. For me, I think, at least. I don't know. But again, you don't find these things unless you really spend time with it. And again, take a look. I did not see this. I was focused too much on Moses. And I think Perugino is saying Moses ain't the center of the story. Zipporah is. That's kind of cool. Okay? So, and again, you don't see Zipporah in my discussion here. It's only about Moses, Moses, Moses. And he's probably like ready to poop his pants because he's about to die. But Zipporah's got it all under control and is really cool, and the kids aren't coming unglued like their kids, like as if they were at Walmart or something like that. So she's got it under control. Good job, Zipporah. And again, once again, she becomes more and more part of my interpretation. You see her showing up again and again and again. And I'm going to add her more to my final interpretation, and she's going to be more and more central to it. Because again, look at the way she's occupying this space, and he's always off to the side. He was only central to this whole thing at the very opening. But then he gets pushed. Zipporah keeps occupying the middle of these scenes. Scene 1, Scene 2, Scene 3. And now again, I want to emphasize something. I'm only doing 3 body paragraphs because I'm running out of time. You need to do 4. You need to segment your painting into 4 different perspectives so you can get 4 body paragraphs out of it. I'm only doing 3 because I'm lazy and that's the way I am. So more and more in my paintings, Zipporah is moving more and more to the center of it and becoming more essential to it, to this aesthetic of the beautiful. And I find it a beautiful painting in spite of the troubling elements. I find the beauty overtakes it, and that's the effect of it. It's a beauty overlapping the sublimity. Is kind of where I'm going with it. Let's see where I'm going with my thesis, though. I have no idea. Let's see what the heck I was saying. Now, I didn't start the thesis until I really had these body paragraphs under, going in the right direction. And I wrote this introduction after I had those body paragraphs down. I didn't write it first. And what I really want you to see is that I changed my interpretation as I was writing. The writing itself was a discovery process. Okay? And that's when I wrote my introduction, was after I really got the body paragraphs going. And then I tried 3 stabs at the thesis statement. And again, the thesis always takes repeated tries. Perugino's fresco interprets the difficult and troubling story of Moses' return to Egypt as one where a resolution to a crisis that threatens Moses and his people is resolved through the maternal actions of Zipporah. Okay? And I looked at that and I go, you know what? I'm not really talking about aesthetics in there. That's a nice thesis. A for effort, C for execution. There's nothing on aesthetics in there. Okay. Perugino's fresco creates harmony out of the difficult and troubling story of Moses' return. Notice that I start to bring in aesthetics more. I start to improve my thesis. Okay. Out of the difficult and troubling journey of Moses' return to Egypt by showing Zipporah using her maternal care to circumcise her son and resolve a crisis that threatens Moses and his people. And that's better, but I still haven't mentioned that this thing is beautiful. Okay? I'm getting the harmony in there. I'm getting the calming the thing, the maternal care and everything. It's going in the right direction. It's not there yet. So keep at it, Joe. Let's see what you can do. So this is my 3rd attempt. Perugino's fresco creates beauty. Hey, there you go. You finally did it, kid. Good job. Creates beauty by resolving the difficult and troubling story of Moses' return to Egypt with a harmony. Notice I kept the harmony in there from this one, and I made darn sure beauty was a part of it. As Zipporah uses her maternal care to circumcise her son and resolve a crisis that threatens Moses and his people. Now that's getting better. It's still not a great thesis, but you know what? I'm on my road to doing it. I can get rid of those other two thesis statements, keep that last one, and I can start cobbling this together. This essay is starting to fit together and starting to work. This is where you want to be by the start of next week. Okay? So go through it piece by piece, use it as a discovery process, start with the form, describe your painting carefully, and then look up some research on it. Like I went through Exodus, and I'm going to introduce a little bit more from Exodus and from Vasari, and get a little bit more on Perugino. I'm going to bring in more of the research, but my interpretation now is pretty well set, and I'm going to start going to outside sources to see what they're saying. The big thing is you're not writing a report. Don't go to the outside sources from the beginning. Don't do that. Don't do that, don't do that, don't do that. Because then you just write their interpretation, and it's hard to get away from somebody else's interpretation. It's hard to form your own once somebody else's has been planted in your mind. So instead, develop your own carefully. Go through the process, put it together, and now it's time to go researching once you've really got your own feet on the ground and you know what you're doing. Okay? So that's where it is, guys. Try to get there. Make sure everything's nice and peaceful these last couple weeks, or last week or so. And finish this up and get ready to go for Christmas dinner and everything else, okay? Take care, guys.